Welcome back to the Inside Track. Today we're talking with our friends at Ganassi Racing to hear how the first race of the NTT INDYCAR Series went at Texas Motor Speedway. Let's get started with introductions.
My name is Barry Wanzer. I'm team manager of racing operations.
My name is Felix Rosenqvist and I'm a driver of the number 10 car.
My name is Mike O'Gara. I'm in charge of personnel for the Indy shop.
My name is Mike Hull. I'm the managing director for Ganassi Racing.
I'm Chris Simmons. I'm the director of performance at the Indy shop for Ganassi Racing, including all three of our entries.
And I'm Mel Harder, team manager logistics.
Earlier this month, the NTT INDYCAR Series returned to Texas Motor Speedway for the first race of the 2020 season. But being one of the first sports to return to regular activity, INDYCAR did implement several restrictions to keep teams and drivers safe. So what type of procedures were different as you entered Texas Motor Speedway? And what different rules did you have to follow either within your own team's transporters at the track or throughout the garage and paddock area?
So from a travel standpoint, INDYCAR took really proactive efforts to make sure that there were rosters. Each team had a maximum of 20 people that could attend the race, and they approved them whether they were essential or not. I think we came up pretty lean, and we were below 20 for each team. And then once we got to the airport early Saturday morning, it was important that everyone flew as for a one-day event. INDYCAR had staff there to check in the rosters, to apply a sticker to our hard card to make it easier when we get to Texas to do the medical checks. They also did temperature checks at the Indianapolis airport. So they knew that everyone that was getting on the planes did not show any signs of COVID-19. But this is also just an extension of what we've been doing every day at the shop. So it was really an opportunity for us to take the processes that we had engaged in at the shop on a daily basis with our force and take it to the track.
We tried to split the staff in half so that we could still get cars built and get things done. So one half of the staff will work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The other half would work Tuesday, Thursday. And then the next week they would alternate. So there's been a huge amount of communication between mechanics and crew chiefs and managers and the engineers to hand projects off, because it's not the same guy there every day working on each car or engineering projects. So every morning we have a meeting. The crew chiefs talk about what got done on the cars the previous day. The engineers talk about how they've made progress on their projects, and they hand them off to the next guy in line. And obviously we must have done something right, because we were clearly the cars to beat at Texas. So the cars ran pretty much without issue. We won the race, and we managed to keep INDYCAR happy and not break any of their new COVID rules in the process. So in all, it was a huge success, I think.
To speak to the point of number of personnel we brought the people that we absolutely needed to have in case we lost the internet connection or something like that. But then we had more staff helping out remotely. We had our intercoms connected remotely through the internet with people helping back at the shop. We had telemetry going out over VPN that people could log into from the shop. So we had engineers at their homes and at the shop helping support what we were doing in Texas.
One of the additional challenges of being with the screening is what we discussed. What do we do if one of the mechanics fails the temperature check and can't get on the plane? At that point, there's no opportunity to get another flight for an individual. Like, the plane's still leaving, just that person can't go. So we even took the steps of having one of the shop-based mechanics meet at the airport early in the morning. He was on the roster, and he was on standby to get on the plane in case somebody couldn't go. So fortunately, we wasted his morning, and he was able to go back home. And everybody that we needed to go to the track was able to go. And then the guidelines that INDYCAR had put in place at the racetrack, like Mel said, restricted the amount of people that were actually in the footprint of inside the secure area. So I think it was around 700 people total. We had to follow the social distance guideline, wearing a mask all day. It was 98 degrees. It's quite challenging. But that was also, the track was the first time that our groups that work specifically on their individual cars at the racetrack got to work together since we went to St. Pete before the COVID kind of changed our lives. Everything we've been doing at the shop was to keep groups separate, so if we had an issue at the shop, we wouldn't lose the entire team, and not the entire team of each individual car too. So Texas was the first time really everybody got to work together in the last 10 weeks.
From the engineering side, we got used to doing remote meetings early on in this process. Almost as soon as St. Pete was canceled or postponed, we were on Zoom talking about how we were going to keep our projects moving forward and keep improving our products. So we got very good at doing Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and other virtual meetings leading up to the Texas race, and it really just continued into the race. Normally we would have one big engineering office with all three groups of people getting together there after a session, and we had to split those up for social distancing reasons. So everybody was in a different office in the truck. So the 9-car people were in one office with at least 6 feet between people in that office. 10-car people were in a different area, and we still just met over Teams, or we met outside right after the session in a big socially distanced group to discuss what Felix was going through with the NTT car, what Scott was going through on his car, what Marcus was going through, and the time constraints were pretty tight at Texas being a one-day event. So we continued on with our Teams meetings, and we even did the race meeting virtually with people in spotters up in the suite getting ready for the race, crew chiefs starting the cars and being on their phones participating in the meeting, managers in their office, and engineers spread across 3 different offices. Even though we were 50 or 100 feet apart from each other at times, we were meeting, we could have been miles apart and conducted the same meeting. So the technology was pretty incredible.
That's a lot of prep work. Typically you have 2 to 3 days to prepare for a race between practice, qualifying, and race day, but with this event, everything was jam-packed into one day.
Early on in the process, we tried to identify everything we could do ahead of time for events that were going to come up later in the season. We recognized early on that when we got back to racing, the schedule was going to be very compressed. So, for example, each engineer does a pre-event report for their driver and for their team that includes historical data, what tires we're using, aero data, and it'll be updated with weather and things like that at the last minute. We went through and did as many of those reports and as many sections of those reports as we could ahead of time during the few weeks we had where we weren't racing. So when it came time to do Texas, that report was ready except for filling in the weather and the gears and the radiator blocker settings at the last minute. And that freed us up to make sure that we could then perform our job without worrying about some of those details, and took some of the load off under a very tight one-day schedule. We'll continue with that process going forward, and I think it'll help us as we get further into the season that we're ahead on some of those details and somewhat better organized than maybe some other teams were. I think also going through the steps at the shop and having to wear a mask all day, learning how to work under social distancing guidelines helped prepare us. And I think the plan we had going in at the shop was very detailed, but also as simple as possible. And that carried through to exactly how we worked at the track. So
Felix, as a driver, what's it like for you to change any race day rituals or to change your habits, knowing that you have to practice, qualify, and race all in a single day, and you don't have 3 days to spread that out?
I think it's all about, putting it into your mind that it's going to be a tough challenge. whatever you prepare for, normally you will be able to execute it if you prepared well. And if you have three days to do something, then you're probably going to maximize those 3 days. And if you have 1 day, you're going to maximize that 1 day to make sure you can do as much as possible and do it as well as you can. And it was surprisingly, I think, because every one of us were so prepared for it. And I mean, the amount of emails and procedures and information that was coming in, especially the week before, was just, I mean, it was almost too much to bear. And for me as a driver, I didn't have to pay attention to as much of that as the other guys. So I felt pretty lucky in that sense. And it felt once we got there, it was pretty natural and everyone knew what to do. And we, as you spoke about earlier, we had so much preparation on handling things on Zoom and Discord and with the whole iRacing thing, those things kind of felt natural when we got there. And I think that helped a lot certainly for me. When I was on the track, basically all I needed to do was to keep a mask on, so keep the basic rules of social distancing, do the meetings with the engineers in Zoom, and then just jump in the car and do what I normally do in the car. So it was pretty, somehow it felt pretty normal. And I think that's, shows the work the team did to kind of unload us drivers to be able to really focus on just driving. And I think that's also a reason why we were so successful in Texas.
Now, you mentioned the new normal, and right now we're looking at going to Indianapolis Motor Speedway on July 4th, racing again without fans and again with presumably all of these safety precautions. As a team and as a driver, what did you learn from Texas Motor Speedway that you're going to be able to take with you to the race in July?
Well, in case of the whole COVID thing, we learned that we as a team probably, we can do this better than any others. We just have to keep that momentum going and, whatever we're doing, try to improve the little details and keep doing the same thing for Indy. From a driver point of view, it was kind of a breakthrough for me on ovals. Obviously, the result didn't show that in the end of the day. With 190 laps to go, we had a little incident there with lapped cars. Unfortunately, the cars were certainly class of the field, and Dixon showed that with taking the win. And I think we would have had a second place there if that didn't happen, but that's the way it is. But it was still encouraging. I think everyone was encouraging to see how much I've improved on the ovals, and also the how our engineering department has worked on the car during the winter, and really I think we really stepped up our game for Indy, and that's been the main goal during the whole winter. That's been the talk in the in all these meetings. We have to get better for Indy. That's the target. So I think everyone's really excited to get back there and really show what Ganassi can do there.
To follow what Felix said, certainly we're looking forward to the Grand Prix, even more so because the team has momentum. Not just the 9-car guys because Dixon won the race, but because we work as a team and all 3 cars had speed. It creates additional enthusiasm. We want to perform. We want to be fast, and when you show that, you want to continue doing that. So it's very motivating. We're looking forward to it.
You mentioned, obviously, with the confidence of the team, this is Scott Dixon's 4th time winning the Texas race with Chip Ganassi Racing. Can you guys talk a little bit about that special sauce that Chip Racing has at Texas Motor Speedway?
Texas is a good example of how a team works together. There was a specific priority list that was created before the first practice session on the racetrack between that there was a shared responsibility between the 3 teams to test certain items that then midway through the session the team could compare to try to get a direction for the next part of that session, that practice session, to be ready for the race. If each team individually would have had to go through that priority list, they would have never gotten through it in the amount of time that we had available to us before qualifying. And post qualifying, you weren't allowed to work on your car. It was in an area called impound, which basically means it's in the forbidden zone. you can't touch your race car until the driver sits in it to start the race. So I think our team did a really, really good job. First time out with an impound race, first time out with a one-day event. They proved that by working together, they could achieve a great amount of success. If you took what they did in qualifying, Scott Dixon qualified toward the end because qualifying was based on season points from the previous year. That's when the track is the best. So Scott was able to take full advantage of it. So all the work that we did as a team would have showed well at the end of the race no matter what. Momentum is created by a positive result. Momentum is created by a positive teamwork. And the team is then, they understand the validation of what they've done prior to the event. In this case, we had quite a bit of time to spend to be ready. And people probably from the outside don't truly realize not so much how hard you work, but what you achieve in the amount of time that you have as a team. The definition of priority is how you create success. And I think we proved that point.
With Texas in particular, I think there's certain tracks fit certain drivers' styles better than others. Texas has always been a challenging track, and particularly in the race, changes a lot. And Scott's always been good at adapting to that change and changing his driving style to suit the track and the car's handling at that time. So Texas happens to be a track that plays to Scott's strengths. And seeing Felix up there neck and neck with him at what's kind of become Scott's playground, I think just shows the success that's going to be in Felix's future with the NTT car. So we're looking forward to see him win his first race, and I'm sure when he does, there'll be a pile more coming after that. But I think Texas plays to the strength of our drivers and hopefully to our team too.
And we'll end the call on that. So thank you all for joining us for today's call. We do want to wish you the best of luck at the GMR Grand Prix this weekend. Take care.